We'll probably be done in time to see the State of the Union address on the U.S. networks.
I'll rush right home.
I think it's...
Rush right home for that. Want to welcome Corporal Brown back. And there's actually a senator in the United States named Brown back. Or was, formerly. Alexis, it's nice to have you. Corey, Larry Peterson, our media moguls.
Wow. I would like to have their daughter attached to that.
For sure. And back here in the easy chair is Jill. Things are melting. It's a windy spring day.
If you haven't seen Annie yet, go see it.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, my wife went last night.
It's absolutely excellent.
When's the last day?
It's Thursdays. There is
Friday.
sorry. So there's 3 more shows. One tonight.
I think Friday's sold out though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody told me.
Thursdays there's still the tickets
It's
for.
been getting good crowds.
Oh, yesterday was full.
They're closed Wednesday.
Was really, really good.
No show Wednesday.
I mean, that little girl, Vishnu, she's talented kid.
Who is she?
Vishnu?
Kim's daughter.
No,
she's
not.
She's Alicia. No, not Alicia, the other girl.
Alethea's daughter.
Alethea.
Alethea Schnorr. I can't remember what her.
She is amazing. For a 12-year-old, young 12-year-old, she's amazing.
Well, she turned 12 opening night.
She has a voice equal to none and capacity to act on stage beyond her years.
Wow, that's crazy.
And she drags you in a play and makes you believe the play. It's amazing. She's good.
She's going to politics.
Are we 5 o'clock yet? Here, the clock says about 25 seconds. Yeah.
Pretty close.
Well, we'll begin here in about 15 seconds, so we will have Councillor Court offer the invocation.
10 seconds or now?
Now you got 7 seconds to go.
Still taking that long to stand up.
And 2 TikToks.
You are on. Okay.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for many blessings. We're thankful to have the opportunity of representing the citizens of this town. We pray we have thy Spirit with us in this meeting, that we may do thy will and do what is best for our community. We're thankful for all, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councillor. Again, welcome to all that are here with us. We have one addition to the agenda. Under confidential items, there is 12B, a land sale item, which goes in camera. And that being the only addition, I will call for adoption of the agenda. And Councillor Smith so moves. Any discussion on that motion to adopt the agenda with that one addition? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Agenda is adopted. We will move right into our delegation because we have in the gallery Corporal Charles Brown. And it doesn't seem that long ago that he was here with us, but he's back to grace our chambers. Corporal Brown, if you'd like to come and take the podium, and we will receive your RCMP quarterly report. Good to have you with us again.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. I wanted to present to you and bring it to your attention the RCMP fourth quarterly for 2012. Instead of going just through the quarterly numbers, I would like to address the year-end numbers in comparison to last year's numbers. If you look at the mayor's report that was formally submitted to Mayor and Council, for 2011 quarterly, fourth quarter, end of year, for persons offenses, we had 62. This year we have persons offenses 82. Last year for property offenses we have 343. This year we have a slight decrease of 323. Other criminal code last year for Cardston we had 371. This year we have 405. Last year for drugs, we had 24, and we're down to 15 this year. Federal statutes for last year was 1, this year is 2. Provincial traffic, we had for last year was 676. This year we're down to 640. Provincial traffic, last year was 501, and this year we're 566. We're up a little bit there. When it comes to criminal code traffic, last year criminal code traffic was 21, and this year is 18 year end. Last but not least is collisions. For the town last year was 96, believe it or not, this year is 66. So we have, in my opinion, good numbers in the sense of that we, for property crimes, are down a little bit. Other offenses are up a bit. But nevertheless, we are still focused on the annual performance plans for the town of Cardston, which is reducing property, vandalism, and ensuring that we enforce the public behavioral bylaws. To that end, Your Worship, I also want to bring the attention to the council and public crimes of opportunity, where in the last month or two, homes and vehicles have been entered into, and these homes and vehicles have been unsecured, where vehicles had their keys still in the vehicle, and people had lost their vehicles as a result of people using these vehicles as an opportunity to do whatever they need to with the stolen vehicles. And homes is the same way. Homes are not broken into per se. Doors were left unlocked, and people walking in and walking out with whatever personal items they can find at that moment. That's about it for our RCMP report for the fourth quarter. Yeah, if there's any questions, I can address them.
Corporal, you got provincial, then traffic, and provincial traffic. What is the difference between those two?
Provincial minus traffic.
Well,
If you look in the back,
There's no traffic included in provincial.
Oh, I
provincial
got you.
traffic
Sorry,
and
okay.
provincial statutes.
They explained it to me, I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Councillor?
under provincial traffic, that's typically moving violation.
That's correct. That's correct. Provincial traffic is failed to stop, remain at a scene, driving while disqualified.
Councillor Smith.
Did you have any numbers for 2011, 2012 for intoxicated persons there?
For intoxicated persons?
Yeah, at the bottom it shows 968 for 2012. Was there less in 2011? Do you know of, or?
That wouldn't be self-categorized as just intoxicated persons.
Sorry, it says lodged persons in
cells.
cells. Intoxicated persons lodged in cells.
And what's the number that you?
That was right at the very bottom underneath collisions.
968.
It's 968 for 2012,
It seems to be was.
fourth quarter there, or sorry.
Seems to me was much higher last year.
That is 968.
If you don't have, that's okay, that's fine. I was just kind of wondering if you had a,
But year end for locked in cells is around 1,600.
Last year was,
Yeah.
Wow.
so 2011 was around 1,600?
No, this year, 1,600. The year before, about 2011 was 1,900. So we're down.
Okay. This says 968, so I don't know what that is there.
I don't neither.
Oh, is that right? Okay,
I don't
just,
know what that means either.
okay, but it was quite a bit higher than that, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Oh, is that right, eh?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Did you get any more information on this intoxication classification?
Yes, I did, and I called my superiors in regards to that, and everything is the same as it had been before in regards to our abilities to enforce, and so nothing's changed there. It's the articulation when we make an arrest for individuals who are inebriated beyond their means, that we need to be more specific with our wording when we make that arrest in our reports, that this person has been intoxicated and unable to look after themselves, and that's why they are arrested and detained for their safety.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kronen.
all right. You mentioned that we were working on 3 goals last year that we had directed the RCMP to help us with, which was property offenses, vandalism, and downtown kind of monitoring.
Behavior bylaw, yes.
Yeah. And so, in your opinion, those are three goals that are worth carrying on to
Yes.
improve
We continue-
results?
That's right. We are continuing to manage in that area in regards to enforcement, to reduce those areas of, those brought to our attention of crime that's been highlighted, as that we should be focusing on, and we're still focused on that.
So it's for council to approve those goals for this coming year?
Do we need a motion to approve?
No, no, I
Okay.
sign a document annually with the RCMP.
All right,
That
so
that is the direction of council.
perfect, thanks.
Marian, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just had one other comment. One of the questions that came up at the planning session was regarding how the fines and fees are collected.
Mhm.
And yes, we do receive fines from the sheriffs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
it's
what
all
we thought.
inclusive.
Councillor
Edmonds.
Edmonds?
The curfew bylaw that we passed, is that effective?
Most definitely is effective, especially during the warmer climates. We've been using that, we utilize that quite a bit, and yes, to answer your question, it is effective.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just as a follow-up to that, Corporal, when you, I'm guessing if you've got some young people that are out up to no good, or maybe to keep them away from doing things that they ought not do, and you deliver them to their home, do you have any interaction with parents, and what kind of response are you getting from parents?
Okay, and that is a good question, because most of these people are young persons under the criminal code, and anytime that we apprehend those young people, we must contact a parent or a responsible adult to take possession of these individuals and convey to them why they were arrested, and convey to them under what statute as to they were arrested. Yeah.
So, but in terms of the actual response from parents, they just sort of, okay, thank you, or whatever?
No, 90% of the time, if not 99% of the time, the parents are very receptive to the police, and some people were ignorant of the law, or they were just unaware of the young people's behavior, or where it was at the time, figuring that they were at perhaps a neighbor's house or whatever. Yeah.
From a seasonal perspective, this probably isn't the time to ask the question, but I'll ask it anyway. Regarding the skateboard park, has it been your experience that it's a bit of a center of mischief and things, or not? Or what's your assessment of that facility?
I support this facility in the sense that at least it has a youth focus in one area. It can have the potential of where individuals get together and to come up with a like-minded plan of causing some grief for the community, whether it's vandalism or graffiti. But for most part, the youth do use it. They utilize their energy there. There is a curfew. Of course, often it's dark anyways when that curfew comes up. So for most part, I believe for the youth, it's something that I support personally as a police agency. We do too, in the sense that we know who's around. Instead of having to spread them all over the community, it's nicer having them in one spot.
And as a follow-up, sort of for that general area, down at the Lions Park, there are two structures down there. One's been there forever, and one's been there forever minus 10 years, whatever. Do your officers in the detachment find lots of intoxication down there? Is there any paraphernalia or evidence of drug use down there, inhalants and things like that, substance abuse down there?
When you say lots, Your Worship, it's not lots. From time to time, we do find individuals there, but it's not consistent. And for most part, the individuals that we do deal with, that we find there, has not caused us any grief. And sometimes we just ask them to move along with it if it's at curfew time, and they do so.
Okay.
So I haven't noticed any damage to property, mischief, or graffiti in those areas.
Okay.
But once in a while, we will come across individuals who will settle down there for the night, or try to anyways.
Any other questions, concerns, council?
Thank you.
As always, Corporal, thank you very much. We certainly value the interaction and the level of professionalism that you and your detachment provide in the law enforcement and our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Worship.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, councillors.
Okay, we'll move into the adoption of the minutes, and the chair will honor a motion to adopt the minutes of the 22nd January meeting. Councillor Edmonds so moves. Any questions, issues, or concerns in the minutes, as a result of the minutes? I'll call that question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. The minutes for the 22 January meeting are hereby approved and adopted. Agenda item number 6A is there for information. It was passed by way of motion in October, but it is simply there for information. If there's any questions,
Mayor
concerns,
Schow.
Councillor Kronen?
I have one question. There was no mention, as far as I could find, in my reading, as to the maximum time that is expected for the youth to be involved.
1 year.
But I was thinking at each meeting, what are you expecting? 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? What is it that the youth is supposed to invest in time?
If I could, counsel, my philosophy is that that meeting should never be more than an hour. If it's more than an hour, it would be for some special circumstances. But Mary, did you have some comments?
Yeah, I think we didn't specifically put a time frame in there because meetings will depend on the discussion that's taking place, and we didn't want them to feel like they were going to be limited to their input. I would agree with the mayor that in the onset of the meeting, you would kind of establish some parameters.
Yeah, I just was thinking, because I tried to put myself as that youth, and I would kind of like, being a youth, I like to know how much time it's going to take before I commit to anything, right? So if it's 3 hours, it's 3 hours. If the maximum is 3 hours, then I know within 1 or 3 hours
I think,
be done.
thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dahl and then Councillor Creed.
I had a comment on the length of service. I'm wondering if you had a staggered term of service, so there'd be some continuity as new members of the committee would come on.
That's a good comment. One thing that might do that, we could maybe possibly add that potential for renewal of a term for a second year in some cases. But you're right, that's a good item to address in that. Marian is noting that accordingly. Would you want the possibility, Councillor, that an individual could stay a second year?
That would be fine.
Okay. But you would like to see those terms staggered?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, if you're going to have 5 people on the committee or 6, maybe there's one there when it gets started. You'll say one's there for 2 years or 3 years, and so on. So that you've got continuity.
Okay. Councillor Creed, you have a comment?
Just a question, I just wonder what the status was at this point. Do we have the applications at the high school, or have we, received any applications?
We're not to that point yet.
We were waiting for council's sort of review of this documentation, and then we will engage the schools.
The schools,
Yes. I might just point out, the original proposal that was put forward included representation from surrounding communities, being the county and the Blood Reserve. Administration recommended to the FCSS board that because we are an elected body and we're a public body, and the point of this is to give the mayor and council some direction as far as youth programming goes, that we felt that if there was representation from, let's say, the county, that it was appropriate to have an elected official there from the county to hear that input from their residents as well. So we took that to the FCSS board. Councillor Cam Francis sits on that board. His recommendation was leave it with town residents and the mayor. And if it's working well and we see we want to expand it, then perhaps we could put that opportunity out.
The other thing, if I could, Council, is, as Marian and I discussed this, we want to aim for a reasonable cross-section. We don't want it to be just to pick an example, all female and all, say, of some predominant religion, if there happens to be one in the area. So we would want to have a bit of a male-female mix. We would want to try to find a resident or two or three from one of the visible minorities in our community. And we certainly do not want, if there happens to be a predominant religion, we don't want it to be dominated by that. So we want to try to have it be a reasonable cross-section. And this is actually quite an exciting thing for me personally, because I enjoy interaction through my business, and over the years when I had kids in sports, enjoy the interaction of our youth. And I believe that in consultation with the two principals, Austin Nunn at the junior high and Dahl Nunn at the high school, I think we're going to get some good candidates. And we don't necessarily want to exclude or include anybody, like, for example, the student body president may not necessarily need to be on this council. The jock athletes or whatever may not need to be, but, we want maybe one or two, because sports is a significant component of our community. Having said that, it just happens that our boys basketball team is the only undefeated 4A team in Canada right now, probably ranked about number 8 or 9 in the province, in the nation, and is indeed undefeated. So they'll have to change that now that we won that tri-pro. Okay, so any comments or questions or concerns further about the Mayor's Youth Council?
One more, as you mentioned, trying to get a diverse group there, I wonder if there's any thought about advertising it, other than through the schools, if we might want to be slightly more broad, maybe in the newspaper, in case there's somebody that wouldn't. I understand the schools would probably catch all of the youth, but wondering if there was a thought to expand it any further than schools.
Hadn't actually thought about that, because basically everybody should be in school, and I guess we could go into the homeschooled.
Well, I guess maybe the alternate school.
Or the alternate school realm.
Could, be a target as well. There might be youth there.
We could do that, for sure, we could do that. So let me ask you this, Councillor. Is there a point of contact for those homeschooled young people? Is there some point of contact through the alternate school?
Yes, I would say that there's a principal in the alternate school, and that would probably,
Heather Schmicky.
Yeah, Heather.
So Heather actually has some rapport and regular interaction with those young people from families where their homes homeschooled.
Yeah, I think that would be.
So maybe let's note that, Marian, that we would maybe want to have a feeler out.
Yep.
To the
other schools. Yep.
Alternate schools.
Just to the alternate school. That really should catch everybody. Councillor Kronen?
I want to make a comment, and I want to congratulate you, Mayor, for taking that on. I really am a strong believer in youth, and when I read the 13 ways to kill a community, one of the ways to kill it is by not involving the youth. And I think that is a good step in the right direction.
Well, thank
so
you.
much.
And as I mentioned, it is exciting, because for a couple of reasons. We want to empower them. We want to listen to them. We want to let them know that they are valued. And who knows, the next Prime Minister could be someone from the Mayor's Youth Committee here in Cardston. Premiers, MLAs, MPs, heaven forbid mayors, in that ranks as well.
That gives them an interest.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your input, council, and we will move forward with that Mayor's Youth Council. Now, we have under category 7, request for decision. Now, we probably will wait on 7B because 7A because it connects directly to the public hearing. So with your indulgence, we will do that. Want to draw your attention to bylaw 1581H, a land use bylaw specifically directed to signage. And we will need first reading on that tonight. And it will go to public hearing. I've got that date. It will go to public hearing, I believe, on the 20th of March. Is that correct? I have it written down.
12th.
12th
March
of March,
12th.
okay.
Your worship, would you like me to speak to this bylaw?
If you would, please. Thank you.
Okay. This bylaw is put forward as a recommendation from the Municipal Subdivision and Development Authority. My understanding is they were dealing with a number of applications for variance to the signage bylaw, specifically in that downtown core. And it had to do with the size of the fascia of the buildings and the signs being too limiting. So they're recommending that size be increased to the 200 square feet, I believe.
Yeah.
But really, that was the main purpose, is they felt that there was no opposition to these variance requests, and they just felt that the bylaw was perhaps a little too restrictive. So, as you said, Your Worship, tonight it's just a matter of first reading to have the bylaw put on the agenda of council, and then we will go to public hearing of this bylaw and notification to the public prior to that, and the public hearing is scheduled for March 12th.
The chair will honor a motion for first reading. Councillor Kronen so moves. Okay, so we're going to have some discussion on this first reading, because if there's anything that's glaring there now, let's get it in the minutes if we could. So let me just ask a couple of questions. Is it a fair assumption that there may be some signs which are currently non-compliant? Is that a safe assumption?
Well, I would say that there's always that opportunity, or a lot of signs, though, have been given a variance by the planning commission.
Okay.
Yes.
Councillor Edmonds?
The reason why it was put forward was that one of the companies that wants to put up a new sign, the minimum sign that they will supply the company is larger than what we allow at the present time with 150 square feet.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't know the one you're referring to, but I know a sign recently went through that variance process and was approved. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, the thing that is to be noted is that all signs are subject to regulation. All signs need a permit, and so that's of note. Because it says here, unless otherwise specified in section 15. So there are possibly some exceptions. A permit application is required for all signs. Did I see a hand raised for a question? Oh, Councillor Smith.
Well, I was just gonna say, do we need to go in and change the bylaw, or can we just get in and go in for a variance, or is that just more inconvenient to do that, or?
Probably more convenient to change the bylaw than have them continually coming to the
MPC for
variances.
variance in there, okay.
So that way,
Okay.
Nola could just do it without having to bring it to the meeting.
Okay.
As is indicated in the background, and as indicated, there are a lot of applications for variance. And so that's exactly right,
Okay.
Councillor Court.
So
We
it
want
falls
to make
within
some
that.
changes so that we don't have to have this constant flow of requests for variances, Councillor Cronin.
Just for my own information, when someone wants to open a new business on Main Street or wherever, adjacent street, are they given a copy of that signage bylaw so that they are within regulation? Because ignorance can land you by doing things that are not appropriate, like putting a sign right on a wall without the proper framing, as requested.
The signage bylaw is a portion of the land use bylaw, so I would say no, not every business is given a copy of that. But that discussion does take place, not necessarily at the business license application stage, but we could adjust our processes to accommodate that. The problem is there's so many things that relate to opening a business, and perhaps we need to look at sort of giving a bit of a checklist there.
Okay.
Which, you know, might be helpful.
I think that would be a good way to look at it, because a sign is easily overlooked in a process.
Right. If I can just make one more comment to this.
Please.
One of the other reasons that we're recommending the change to the bylaw is it speeds up the process for the businesses. So if they have to go to a variance, we have to have a minimum 5 working days notice to all adjacent property owners. The Planning Commission, or what we call the Planning Commission, the Municipal Subdivision and Development Authority, only meets once a month. So they could be from, you know, up to 6 weeks waiting for approval. So by changing the bylaw, if it's not unreasonable to change the bylaw, it does make the process more streamlined for business.
Just a permit then, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would totally endorse the concern that Councillor Kronen has expressed, that there be some method or more than one method of communication with the public so that a well-meaning entrepreneur does not run afoul of this or any other governing land use / signage bylaw. Councillor Creed?
Yeah, I just noted one small correction, I guess, in section 2, talking about the signage. It gives it 200 square feet, and then in brackets is 18.5 square meters.
Yeah.
And then when we come down to section 3B, it says 200 square feet, but in brackets it's got 9.3 square meters.
Yeah.
So that needs to be brought into conformity with the other ones.
It's on a canopy though, right?
Well, but it's, the
It's
area is
still-
the same, so the area's got to
Yeah.
be the same in meters as it is
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
feet. We can't have two.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can make that change if that's
Oh, yeah, well, it's just.
prior to bringing forward the bylaw to.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's just a typo
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know.
No, that's great.
Okay, so the chair will call a question on motion by Councillor Kronen for first reading. All in favor? Carries, thank you very much. So the next item then is a contractor's policy, and Marian may want to speak to that. As I read through that, I found some very good logic to make the adjustment in clause 5 of the contractor's policy, C/20-2. And then we'll need a motion to approve the policy.
Yes.
Okay?
This amendment to the contractor's policy was presented through the Joint Health and Safety Committee approximately a year ago, and I apologize that somehow it fell through the cracks and we didn't get it back to council. But the recommendation from the Joint Health and Safety Committee was that we amend the policy regarding WCB coverage for what we would consider minor contracts. What we were finding with the limitation of WCB coverage, any of you who have ever dealt with that, it can be fairly restrictive as to who qualifies for WCB coverage. And we found then that we were eliminating a number of businesses within the community who normally would provide services for us for limited dollar contracts because they were not able to get WCB coverage. So we looked at that and said, what is a realistic risk to cover these contracts? And we looked at things such as, I'm going to use, let's say we had to build a shelf at the ice arena. So we may hire a local handyman to do that work for us. The job costs $500, and I'm just throwing out numbers here in the scenario. But that person under the previous policy would have had to have WCB coverage in order to come in and do that work for us. So we felt that there was a level of risk that we were prepared to take as an organization and cover those WCB premiums for those contractors. Another example would be our larvicide program. We're required to have a certified larvicide applicator do that work for us. The contract is about $5,000 a year. Again, he's not a limited company, he doesn't have employees, so he was not able to access WCB. There's limited liability, as far as WCB is concerned, and the amount of the contract is normal. So the other thing that I think is important to keep in mind is under WCB, we're only required to, if there was an injury, we would only be required to pay the amount of the contract. So we're not responsible for this person's livelihood. We're just simply responsible for the contract. So that, in a nutshell, I guess, is the recommendation, because we want to continue to use as many local businesses as possible without making it excessive for them to qualify to work for the town.
The chair will honor a motion for passage of policy C/20-2. Councillor Dahl so moves. Discussion on that motion. Councillor Kronen.
Marian, help me understand again that limited liability of WCB. If you have a contract that is $5,000, for example, that is the extent of the liability of the town under
Under
WCB.
WCB, not liability, but our risk for WCB coverage.
Okay, so in other words, if that person was injured, we have a $5,000 contract with them. The maximum that under WCB we would be asked to pay into would be $5,000.
Yes, that's my understanding of the legislation.
Okay,
Councillor
thank
Creed.
you.
Yeah, you have the limit of 10,000. I just had a question. What is the status of our cemetery contractor?
It's more than that.
Yeah, so does he, because I understand as an individual you can't get WCB, so I
Right.
just, so is he covered, or how does that work?
I'd have to look at his contract specifically, Councillor, I can't speak to that right now.
I was just wondering, because if it varies from our policy and if it's creating a problem, we should make sure we're...
Right now, I can't answer on a specific contract because I'd have to look at, we have numerous contracts in the town.
Yeah,
so-
I just...
But we'll look into that one for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
and just so that we're,
Yep.
I mean, if we need to change the limit on that to make it fit.
Well, the problem is,
I don't want to change my notes.
we have to continue to assess risk,
Yeah,
right?
no.
So that's why we thought the $10,000 threshold was, so this person could do 10 jobs for us in a year that were $1,000 each, and they would still be okay.
Yeah.
So, we would have to assess the risk in that, so.
Yeah, I just...
Okay.
So unless there's a motion to table, the chair will call a question. Okay, all in favor? Carries, thank you. The next one is the Royal Canadian Legion. You've all had a chance to go through this in your agenda backgrounder. The chair will honor a motion or not to participate in the situation where there's some funding involved there. If there's no motion, then we will just move on to the next agenda item. And the motion will have some discussion if there's a motion to participate. I'm not seeing a motion. Is there anybody who wants to make a comment or two?
Well,
Councillor Kronen?
if I understand correctly, it is a project from the Legion that has also a local component attached to it. If they were to find a former soldier that fought in those wars, he would be featured in that book of remembrance that would be made available to locals.
Now,
That's what I
I think
understand.
that's correct. Councillor Court, did you want to speak to this?
I'm just the same as you guys, I'm assuming what they want is us to buy some advertising in their book or something.
Well,
to that
that's
effect.
Quarter
exactly right. There's
page or whatever.
There's a schedule here that goes as small as 1/10 of a page or
And
business
I
card.
certainly support what they're doing. We're also doing a little bit of our own stuff here for a fair
Yeah.
amount of money out. It's gonna cost us like $5,000 to get all of our
Right.
veterans. So I kind of think we're
Is it double?
putting enough money into our own local veterans as far as recognizing them. I think it'd be more recognized the way we're doing it than in a book. Although I
Right.
totally understand the reason behind the book too.
Yeah.
But Alexis is doing a lot of work on this. In the next 3 years, we should have all of our veterans featured in a pretty good sized poster.
Okay,
Councillor
so,
Creed, you had comments?
Yeah, I was kind of questioning, because when I first saw this, I wondered if it was the project that Councillor Court had
No.
been working on.
No.
But it's
no.
a separate project. Is it a duplication, though? That's the other question.
I think this book is going to encompass, I don't know how many veterans they're talking about here. All of Alberta and Northwest Territories, I'm guessing they're going to try and get everybody's name in this particular book. But I really don't know much more about it than that. Maybe do a little more research on this.
Mary, do you have any comments?
I would agree with Councillor Court that this is a more extensive, province-wide and perhaps beyond the province boundaries. They're just looking for advertising dollars to help support the book. But they have told us that there would be copies of this given to our local region. And we talked with Keelan Kelly, and she said, yes, this is something that they support as a legion. Because we get a lot of requests that we're not sure if they have
Yeah.
an affiliation, but yes, this one does.
I'd be interested to see where they're getting all their information from, which veterans are actually going to, I mean, there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands. It won't fit at 300 pages.
Right.
I'd be interested to see which veterans they are targeting.
I would tend to agree that a local initiative that will clearly and maybe more comprehensively, because if you've got a massive number of soldiers who made that ultimate sacrifice, and maybe they're going to be something like that in a, just small, in a little publication, we will certainly, if I'm not mistaken, do them
Not
very
justice.
good justice on a larger scale if we limit
Yeah.
our efforts and our expenditure just to our local fallen. Having said that, the chair, if there's a motion forthcoming, will honor the motion and discuss it and vote on it.
I guess I'll make a motion just so we can discuss it because, yeah, I'll move that we put an advertisement in there. The question I'm going to ask, and we'll just for discussion, is that if this has a wide circulation in the province, would it be beneficial to have the town, advertise the town in it, just for exposure for our community? That's the...
If I could, Councillor, would you mind telling us what participation level you want to move?
Okay, I will say a quarter page, because we want it big enough that, if we're going to put it in the town, we want it big enough somebody will see it. And then I'm just asking for discussion
Okay.
if we feel that would be beneficial for the community to have our name in the book so that people can see Cardston.
Are you thinking color or black and white?
Oh, let's just...
Color is 545, black and white is
Black and white is
445.
445. I'll just say quarter page, and if somebody wants to amend that.
Okay, any discussion on that
We'll go
motion?
with that. That was the discussion, so if you...
Councillor Edmonds?
Well, they say it's going to be approximately 300 pages, but if they sell all kinds of advertising, then all those pages can be eaten up with advertising, and with very little room for the veterans.
So any other questions or comments? I'm seeing that. I will call that question. All in favor? Oh, Marian?
Sorry, I just have one comment. I think if you're looking at this for exposure, I would suggest that the full color is a more appropriate
Yeah.
ad because it will stand out as compared to just the black
Yeah.
and white, if that's your purpose. If it's simply to show support for the veterans, then I think the black and white is sufficient.
Councillor,
I
you
agree.
open to that friendly amendment or not?
I'll take a friendly amendment there, yeah.
I can't make friendly amendments.
No, he's making a friendly amendment.
I will take the suggestion and make a friendly amendment.
He's making a friendly amendment. Okay, so the friendly amendment
Because
is...
that would be my purpose.
Sorry, my wording isn't exactly correct, but okay.
I mean, that would be my purpose, not necessarily support for the veterans, that would do that, but just if there's any value, it would be for exposure.
Okay, Councillor Kronen.
I have two questions. One is, do we understand what's the distribution level of this document? Two is, how do we intend to pay for this item if we were to accept it? Out of what? Out of our donation fund, or out of our tourism, if we are trying to expose the town? Which pocket is it coming out from?
Good question. What would be appropriate?
Jeff's budget. I think it would be appropriate to come out of either miscellaneous public relations or our tourism marketing.
Okay.
Sounds to me miscellaneous public relations, would that be...
That would be, I would think.
Okay, any further questions or comments, Councillor Edmonds?
10,000 copies is a lot of copies. And how many schools would there be in Alberta? It's like they were talking about putting it in schools. So 10,000 seems like a lot.
You know, what
I
should be
mean,
good
it's-
exposure. If that
It's a
gets
fair
out.
distribution.
Yeah, but to who?
But that's my question. To whom?
Veterans themselves will buy them, legions will have a copy,
Yeah.
schools will have a copy, libraries will have a copy.
Is the purpose of this to be a broad-based fundraiser for the Legion, which I don't necessarily voice an opinion on? Okay. Any further comments or questions, Council?
I would just be more inclined myself to donate to the Legion directly, because I think what we're doing in the town is more than adequate for our own veterans. I mean, I don't understand where you're coming from too, as far as exposure to the town.
That would
Okay,
be.
so Jill, you have the motion. I will call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion fails.
Bring it in for discussion.
RMRF Municipal Law Seminar. It's there in front of us, and I know I won't be going to that. I don't think anybody from administration is going. Is there anyone from council who may see something of specific value and would like to go?
What date is that one?
March 1st.
It's in Airdrie, March the 1st.
I'll be in Calgary at that time, so if we feel it would be worthwhile, I would be willing to attend.
The session on election was given at AUMA, was very good.
Well, and there's going to be the same thing done again this year.
It's the same thing.
Duplication there.
So,
I mean, I don't want to speak and be the sole voice against it or in favor of it. Having said that, in discussion with Marian, I know administration doesn't feel the need that administration is going to be represented.
What's the cost of it?
it's quite expensive too.
I don't believe there's a cost to attend,
So,
Isn't it?
Councillor Evans
I don't
wanted to
believe
go,
so.
you go.
Yeah.
other than per diems and hotels and mileage and whatever.
But Edrie is far away.
But a registration fee, I don't believe there is a
But if you're in
registration.
Calgary, you're not
Do they
very
need
far.
RSP or,
I will need to register anyone who is interested in attending. If I might, Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I
Yeah.
shouldn't be speaking out to him. One of the reasons that administration is not planning to attend is because there wasn't any issues here that we felt were pertinent to our upcoming issues that we may be facing. The one with employment is always valuable, but we've had a number of incidents over the last few years that we've used a substantial amount of legal advice on for employment. And so we feel that we're fairly up to speed on current legislation.
And the expropriation item, there was also locally a very good seminar which I attended.
Okay, so we'll leave that then, and now 7F and 7G. Here's how I'd like to handle this. I'm just going to simply do it and say, if any member of council wants to make a motion in support of either of these donation requests, the chair will honor that motion and then there will be discussion. If there's no motion, then the requests are are denied.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
on that? Are these events in town?
No,
No.
none of them. They
Maybe,
don't fit
On the side of
our
the hill.
policy.
maybe you could just, for the media, maybe just read out what 7F and G are.
Well, these got the agenda.
Okay.
Do you have the agenda, Corey?
Well, Channel 32, I mean,
Citizens don't.
I have the agendas.
anyhow, whatever.
Okay, so 7F is to donate for the Sundance that will be held in July each year at Standoff. And 7G is a donation for an honor dance, a jingle dance special held at Indian Days in honor of a princess, Kainai Indian Days senior princess, relinquishing her crown at the end of a term for the new successful contestant. So those are the two motions that make
I'll make one comment on this.
Yeah, yeah.
I appreciate that they do their shopping in town, and that's awesome, and our community would not run very well without First Nations Blood Reserve, but everybody could use that same thing. Everybody that's going to ask for donations shops in town. So,
I can say that as a private business entrepreneur, I will probably be donating to
there we go.
something here, and if they're gone to the Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce might choose otherwise. Any, Councillor Smith?
Well, we do have a policy as well for donations, and if it doesn't fall under that,
It is.
if it doesn't fall under that, then obviously.
You're exactly right, you're exactly right, Councillor Creed.
Exactly.
I would just like administration in answering these letters to explain that we are responsible for the taxpayers' money, and that we can't, because of our policies, we can't just give the taxpayers' money to anybody. That's a sacred trust. I'm sure they could word it appropriately.
And could cite certain conditions and terms in our policy.
And Councillor Creed, it's well understood when a blood reserve gets requests from the town. At one point, we made a request. The same principle apply for them.
That's why I'm saying it'd be good to explain.
It is the same principle. They entertain what benefit them locally.
Mary?
Just for administration, would council want us to just automatically respond to these requests saying they don't fit the policy, rather
think
than
so.
bringing them to council?
I would think so.
I just don't want someone to come to you and say, I made a request, and you didn't see it. That's, it's kind of a catch-22, but we're prepared to just respond and say, sorry, but this doesn't meet policy.
What's your feeling, Council?
Absolutely.
It'd be a good idea.
I mean, if
Yeah.
we have a policy.
Yeah, we could just report that we sent
Right,
this
report.
letter back.
Yeah.
So that it saves time on the council agenda,
Yeah.
if that's your
Yeah,
preference.
I think that seems to be the consensus here.
I think so.
A fair majority, overwhelming majority appears to support that. Pursuant to Councillor Creed's comment about her response, it can sound a little bit impersonal, cold, or whatever to say that doesn't meet our policy. You might want to mention something that says, please note section 3B or whatever of the policy, and so, after much deliberation, council has a policy and it is not compliant to the policy pursuant to this particular section.
We'll draft it appropriately.
Perfect, yeah, you always do a great job, thank you very much. Now we're now moving into committee of the whole recommendations, and we'll move through here. By each item, we'll go to motion, and again, we'll allow some discussion on each motion, which are recommendations flowing from the committee of the whole of a week ago. 7H, number 1, guide to land development process. Is there a motion to approve that resolution? Councillor Smith so moves. Discussion on the motion to approve guide to land development process. Any discussion on the motion? I will call that question. All in favor? The motion is approved. Going on to 7H2, transfer station employee. Can I have a motion to approve that recommendation? Councillor Dahl so moves. Any discussion on that recommendation for that?
Could I just ask a question since I was indisposed?
Yeah.
So this person would be a regular town employee then? Okay.
And we'll work, there will be, as it's
3
proposed
days.
right now, 3 days open at the transfer station and 2 other full days specifically tasked with enhanced recycling. Councillor Down?
Will we change the signage at the gate?
Oh, for sure, for sure. As soon as that change is implemented, we will definitely change that.
So would this come into effect as soon as he is hired, or would we wait for July? or
Kind of thought
whatever?
we'd have Jeff run the place until we get it. No, just kidding. No, this.
I'll go out there. I'll be glad to go.
This will
Mind a little
come-
solitude occasionally.
this will come into effect, because this will go to competition immediately?
Yes, yes.
This will go to competition
Yeah,
immediately.
we're just
Okay.
preparing the job description
Okay.
so that everything's in place before. we
Right,
have
so
to-
we probably be a month or 2 down before we change the,
I assume we'll be advertising extensively so people know it won't be 4 days, only
Yes.
3? Okay.
well, I was thinking maybe if we could put it in the tax notices.
Yeah.
Can I just make a comment to that?
Yeah.
A couple of times you've commented about putting things in the tax
Interesting.
notice. Right now, we're on the verge, we double-side some stuff, and we do everything we can to not have to
Disgusting.
pay $1.50 per mail, you know?
Right.
So that's one side of it, but the other side is, when people get their tax notice, there's a ton of information in there. And I'm not sure, because there is so much, that it all gets appropriately read. I think we
Better.
probably get more bang for our buck to do a mail drop with a
Mhm.
flyer that says, just for your information, right?
Yeah.
But there's other ways we can notify as well,
Right.
not just simply through that. But it's just one concern when we talk about tax notice distribution.
With a change in the transfer station schedule, it might justify a mail drop on that one. Councillor Courtney?
Just one other question. Do we know how busy she is or has been on those 4 days?
Yes.
Are you going to create more problems like shutting down a day and trying to
No,
squeeze them
we
into 3?
discussed all that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She is-
before
she is-
we made this presentation, I met with Rita
Okay.
and we talked about that
All right.
specifically. Yeah.
Friday is the slowest day, and so that will be the day that will be cut back. Okay, so I'll call that question. All in favor? That one carries, thank you. 7H3, Levitt Irrigation District. Refresh my memory on that one just a little bit.
That was a recommendation to discuss a tri-party agreement at the intermunicipal committee.
Okay,
And to
gotcha.
her, yeah.
We'll call that motion. Councillor Kronen so moved. Any discussion on that motion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. The joint business licensing, Marian's had some follow-up discussion with the county on that one, but it will be placed on the agenda with our intermunicipal meeting with Councillor Court and myself on the 27th, up there with Marian. Can I have a motion on that one, please? Councillor Creed so moves. 7H4, recommend
Can we
joint,
vote on it?
joint business licensing discussion.
Mr. Mayor, you want to vote on that?
We need to vote
So
on
he
it.
wants to have a discussion.
Oh, Levitt Irrigation District, did we not vote on that?
No, we didn't.
sorry.
All in favor of the recommendation for Levitt Irrigation District on that intermunicipal meeting agenda? And the same for the joint business licensing.
That we did.
We've got a motion, we'll vote on that motion too. All in favor? Okay, carried. Electoral Boundaries Commission, we sent letters of support, and that was recommended from the Committee of the Whole. All in favor? That one carries. Councillor Creed makes that motion. Next item, I'm going to kind of cover some business here until I see someone that looks like they're not here for the public hearing. But I mean, obviously, we'll go to public hearing before too much longer. Parks and Recreation Board recommendations, the major item being the campground contract. Maybe the chair will, well, I gotta wait 4 minutes, 3 minutes. So let's go down that road. Jeff, are you prepared to speak a little bit to this campground contract with some recommendations?
Yes. You have in the background are the campground contractors. Their contract is officially expired. And so we want to get something new put in place right away. They put forward a proposal, which is essentially the contract is pretty much the same with basically two pieces. The first proposal was that once the $100,000 total revenue has been reached, the management company would not then, they would keep the entire additional revenue after $100,000. And the second proposal they made was that we now bill them $1,000 for the internet, cable, phone, partial utilities, things like that. They asked that that be waived. Parks and Rec Committee is in agreement with most all of this, with the exception that the $1,000 fee for those utilities stay in place. But that otherwise they're recommending the remainder of those proposals. Nothing else materially changed in the contract. They're asking for 1 year with an amicable option to renew after this year again for 1 more.
Councillor Kronen.
Jeff, can you explain to us exactly what would be the impact if we agreed upon leaving the excess beyond $100,000? Can you explain to us that amount and why?
Okay. Yes, and thanks for that. I should have mentioned. The campground revenue has been relatively consistent the last few years, around $110,000. I imagine it will stay relatively consistent because it's usually at close to, close to capacity for much of the summer. So what that means is it's an additional $4,500 for the contractor, essentially, because they're not paying the town 45% of that $10,000. So that's the dollars and cents of it. Probably on average $4,500 to $5,000 would be an increase for them. Now, the one thing I will say is they're not at the same time recommending fee increases along with that. So there's a number of ways to increase your revenue. One is more guests and one is higher fees. They're not recommending that the fees are increased at this time. So they're obviously hoping that they can continue to drive traffic to the campground by keeping the fees reasonable and having lots of people there and keeping it full. So did that answer your question, Councillor?
So in other words, they are looking with that $4,500 to kind of equate what they could have asked if they had increased the fee. It's kind of give and take type of thing.
Maybe. Again, I tried to stay, I met with them before they brought this proposal forward, but I didn't feel it was appropriate for me to give suggestions of what they should propose. So I can't speak to maybe their methodology for coming to it, but yes, they could have recommended a number of other ways to increase revenue to try and get that additional increase after our contract.
But $4,500 is a reasonable amount.
I would think it's reasonable. Of course, that's up to the discretion of council,
Right,
but I don't think they're over the top. No.
Okay, seems reasonable.
Councillor Court.
We had a discussion years ago on the campground. We basically decided that it's not really a moneymaker for the town, but it does provide, if it's run properly, we're going to have a lot of people come into town spending their money in our businesses and communities. That was kind of the intent of the campground, not a moneymaker for the town. So if they're doing a really good job and they make a couple of $1,000 extra, I'm all me.
I'd like to speak to your point, Councillor Court, and I think it's an important one. The transition into a new contractor is both time-consuming and a little bit scary because you don't know what you're getting. I'm not trying to throw my support behind any specific part of the proposal, but they've been excellent contractors in the campground. We get, well, frankly, no news is good news in most cases, and we do get positive feedback from guests to the town. We get very little, if any. Maybe over the whole 3 years we had one person who had a small issue, but they've done everything they could to try and rectify that issue. I think they do a very good job. The guests are very happy. The facility is in good shape. They take good care of it. I would personally administratively hate to go through the process of trying to find somebody new and get them up to speed, and more often than needs be.
And Jeff, your concerns about influencing the vote notwithstanding, your comments are extremely valuable, and as a council, I think we'll take them to heart very seriously. Councillor Dahl, please, and then Councillor Smith.
I would suggest we go to a multi-year contract, cuts down on our overhead.
They've asked for 1 year is all they've asked for.
With an option to.
Yeah, they'd like to renew again next year. They'd like to have that option, and I might suggest now, I'm taking a bit of an assumption here. This has been a great thing for both of their families to work on, but their families are getting older, and they're running out of family to work through the summers. And so I think they're looking and saying, most of our boys are away now in a couple of years, and that might be a time for them that it isn't something, it's great summer work for their boys. They can have them working all there together, but those kids just keep getting older and tend to move on. So I think that's part of the reason why they're looking for, let's go a year and then we'd probably like to renew next year if all is well.
Should take on another family and do it.
That's right.
Councillor Smith,
Yeah,
comment.
just under the contractor agrees, it says website maintenance and hosting is removed there. Has the town been doing that? or
Oh,
what's
sorry, the highlighting didn't come through on this. What it used to say is that the contractor, you're looking at part 3, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken?
Yeah,
So to pay the town an annual sum, $1,000, for local phone number, toll-free number, cable and internet, reservation software, maintenance and upgrades, and that part that says website maintenance and hosting, I will remove from this contract because they have taken on their own website and maintain it and host it.
Okay.
So they're not reimbursing us to do that.
Okay.
That's another thing, Shelley being keen on the technology has taken that on themselves, and she takes care of it all. So I was just removing that the $1,000 was to reimburse us for that cost.
Okay, okay.
And I apologize, I guess,
That's
well,
okay, yeah.
I should say Jill should have done this in color, I don't know what to tell you. And that would have shown up nicely, but.
Jill, your name, Jill, your name could be in the minutes, so make sure you put that in there.
So yes, the website
Okay.
maintenance piece would be coming on.
okay. all right,
Is
perfect.
that,
Councillor Creed.
I did clarify, is that the whole section 3 or just part of that section?
Just that last website maintenance and hosting.
Just that part, that
Yeah.
last little line, okay.
Yeah, that's it. Everything else would be what, the $1,000. And I might add, it doesn't fully reimburse us, but it helps offset those costs.
Okay, you just answered my question.
I would like to make a motion that we accept the contract the way it's presented with the recommendation of Parks and Rec not to waive the $1,000 as expressed in our document.
Thank you, Councillor. Motion so noted. Councillor
Can you
Court.
answer my question? I was gonna ask, or is it costing us $1,000 to have the internet cable down, or is it costing the town that much?
Yeah, oh yeah, with the,
Easy.
we pay for the toll-free line
Okay.
and then internet lines, and it's not your basic $20 a month internet line when you have a number of people feeding off it.
Okay, good.
And the utilities for the whole place.
Now, I had a thought about their request for no revenue sharing after the $100,000 ceiling is reached. And it goes something like this. I can agree with that only if the ceiling is reached at or by Labor Day. The purpose for that comment might be to encourage them to keep the campground open as long as it's feasible to do so, and that would be an incentive to give them the 45% and not share that. I wouldn't want them to reach $100,000 before Labor Day, because I think we're leaving money on the table. I would like an after Labor Day condition put on that. No revenue sharing after 100,000 ceiling is reached. Jeff?
If I might, if the concern is not opening the campground as long as they can, all the time they've been there, we've kept it open just till about the water's frozen.
I know.
And they've
it
accommodated
was-
guests right up until we can't keep the water
In
running anymore.
October, they still had.
But my
people
point
there.
really is, if they're running out of
Not this year.
people on the ground with their kids leaving or getting married, going to, the one family had one of their kids got married, of course he moved to Lethbridge. The other family has sent out a mission, so I want to make sure that we don't leave any money on the table if that $100,000 ceiling is reached before Labor Day.
And if I might, Mr. Mayor, and maybe if this appeases what you're looking for, Part 6 under the contractor agreement is they must, till Labor Day, provide campground staff 24 hours a day.
That's what it says.
It's a requirement of
Under
the contract,
6.
so they can't close up shop early or not staff all the way through Labor Day.
Well, but my point really is, I just think we're maybe leaving money on the table if they reach that point by Labor Day. Councillor Smith?
Well, I think that's great. I mean, if they can get to $100,000, I mean, they'd probably want to stay as long as they could, possibly to make that extra money, and good for them. I mean, that just supports our town and our businesses.
Yeah, that goes to my point anyway, so Councillor.
Yeah, so-
Yeah, I believe that's a good incentive. I mean, it's, as you've said, that it's kind of close to the limit of what we usually get anyway. And, anything over 100,000, if they can that's going to give them an incentive to try to keep that campground as full as long as possible, I believe. The only condition I would have, as far as like leaving money on the table, would be if in the future, that they recommend raising the rates, then we renegotiate that ceiling.
Well-
But other than that, I think that the $100 is a good ceiling incentive to give them an incentive.
And you hit a point that I was concerned about as well. I think we should revisit that if and when rates are raised.
Well, because they're asking for a 1 year, I think it's
Okay,
perfectly
all right,
reasonable
all right.
before
That makes
we
sense.
re-up that we would do that.
And so before I call the question, is there anything in their shopping list that's going to be a problem?
How much is it gonna cost to get all those things done there, Jeff, that they're requesting as well?
So let me go back to that so I don't miss something, Councillor, if I might, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Not much. We have some money budgeted already that council's approved for the washroom drainage issue. So actually, we've already had somebody go down and have a quick look at that and start to put together a way. That's been an issue since I've been with the town, is we got a shower that goes out into the floor of the washroom and it's continually, just makes it muddy and dirty. And so we have money in the operational budget of the campground this year already approved to address that issue. Pull-throughs, sites level, trees and lawns, landscape, those are simply cosmetic things. So a little time and effort in a Bobcat, we can have that worked out and no problem. The small garbage bin replaced with one large, we've already had some conversation with them. That may not happen this year, but it's with their agreement that it's simply, we don't have an extra one kicking around. And we budget those every other year. So, and we have to look at priority through the town. So since they sent this to us, we've had that discussion. They're understanding that one maybe can't happen right away. And it's also finding an appropriate location for another large dumpster in the middle of the campground.
Right.
If Darcy goes through at 7 in the morning and half those people would like to be asleep for 2 more hours. There's a number of logistical issues we've got to work through, but no, there's nothing that we can't do financially in the budget we currently have.
Okay.
One other question, prior discussions about this with the prior contractor, we were concerned that a cost or not letting local RV owners dump there, has there been any repercussions of any kind?
I guess with these contractors, they're fine with other trailers, RVers using the dump station.
Okay.
I've never suggested it's been a problem for them.
Okay,
So.
I'll call the question, all in favor? Carries, thank you. Now, while you're up and on a roll, Jeff, would you like to visit the concern from Parks and Recreation about our latest pool proposal? There is a little bit of clarification, and at that meeting,
Mr. Mayor, do you want to do your public hearing just because it's 6:10? It was scheduled for 6. Although she handed me this to do while I'm standing here, so I'm
do it while you're
happy to keep
do it
going.
while you're standing, because there just is nobody here for the public hearing. But while you're standing on a roll, go for it.
Well, I need you to make a motion to go to public hearing. I can't do that.
I'll make a motion to go to public hearing.
Okay, so it's moved that we adjourn the public hearing. All in favor? Okay. Who's speaking to that?
I will, Your Worship. This public hearing is intended to discuss bylaw 1581G. I'll read much of this verbatim. Being a bylaw of the town of Cardston, to amend bylaw 1581, whereas the council for the town of Cardston wishes to amend the list of discretionary uses in central commercial C1 and highway commercial C3 land use districts by adding the use single-family dwelling. And the purpose of the proposed amendment is so that single detached dwellings located in central commercial C1 and highway commercial C3 may be proposed to be added to or structurally renovated or constructed at the discretion of the development authority for the town of Cardston. And so the rest just goes on to explain the particulars of where those words will be added into the bylaw. So again, the intent is we have some areas that are zoned C1 and C3. We have single-family dwellings, and every time a renovation or construction is needed in there, it requires going to the MPC. Being it would still be discretionary, I suppose it would still require.
It didn't allow it.
Yeah, it didn't allow it, period. Now it would be discretionary in those zones, so we can accommodate that.
Okay, is there anyone here assembled that wants to speak to the proposed bylaw 1581G? Seeing none, I'll ask council, any input on that one? Councillor Kronen.
I think it is a wise revision to be able to speed up process for those people who need to upgrade their house or do repairs and who have to go through a huge long red tape in order to get there. That will solve their problem.
Doesn't speed it up, it just allows for it.
Well, yeah, because before they couldn't even do that, they were at a standstill. It
Right.
was,
They
it
can't
was
do it.
even worse.
Yeah, they had to apply for rezoning.
Yeah,
If
right.
they wanted to make those improvements.
But I mean, so it gives them at least a process that would allow them to get there.
Right.
Any members of council want to make comments on the proposed discretionary change? Seeing none, I will call for a motion for second reading.
Reconvene.
I'll
We need to
Oh, we've got to
reconvene.
reconvene.
Yeah.
Motion to reconvene. Councillor Edmonds moves to reconvene. All in favor? Okay, we are officially reconvened. I'll call for a motion for second reading. Councillor Dahl moves second reading. All in favor? I'll call for a motion for third reading. Councillor Kronen so moves. Discussion on the motion for third reading. All in favor? Motion for third reading carries. Jeff, you're still on a roll. Do you want to clarify just a little bit for all of us, and then we'll go back to the Parks and Rec folks on the pool?
Sure. The reason I put this in was because when I got the recommendation from the Parks and Rec Committee, I was just concerned that maybe what we were attempting to undertake with this funding wasn't understood by the Parks and Rec Committee very well, and I just wanted to review this with council to make sure we're all on the same page. The other thing I didn't notice till after this was printed is the purpose of my spreadsheet was to simply test your eyesight. So if any of you could read that, bravo. And I'll go
And it's
over.
incorrect.
Yeah, and there's some incorrect numbers on that, so I was actually hoping most of you couldn't read it, and I'll correct that tonight.
I got up the magnifying glass.
All right. The intent of the spreadsheet was simply to show the dollars we intended to spend on the project. So in the package you have a couple of pieces of paper. You have a sketch of a pool diagram, you have my almost indecipherable spreadsheet, and then you have the proposal from Western Recreation.
Yeah.
The recommendation from Parks and Rec basically states in a nutshell, and Mr. Mayor, you can add if you need to here if I misunderstood, but saying that they're concerned that if we start this process of renovation and redo the basin and plan on doing the remainder of the phases later on, that maybe we won't put in the amenities that the citizens think they're getting, that we presented at the public hearings, or maybe like many good intentions, they're not acted upon and it doesn't happen due to fiscal constraint. What I want to show council is phase one that we are planning, should all the funding come through, would basically build the sketch as shown here. Yes, we would use the existing basin and renovate that basin, and that would stay where it is and the same. But to the south of that basin, we would extend the beach entry and the amenities in the drawing to a tune of about $1.3 million for that whole phase of the project. So I appreciate the recommendation from Parks and Rec saying that, you know, we went to public hearing, we presented amenities, we presented certain facets of the pool that the public would and probably should be disappointed if we don't follow through with. That's what we said we were going to do. I appreciate that recommendation. I just wanted to bring to council's attention so that we're clear when the public is asking you that it would be the intent in the first phase under the renovation funding to provide those amenities. That was simply the intent of that piece.
Councillor Dahl?
There's, I think, an arithmetic problem.
Yeah,
On
no.
clause 2.4 says, budget contract phase 2, 8% of budget price, and it says 87,000, it should be 99,600.
Yeah.
I'd have to break that down. I'd have to get into this a little bit better, Councillor. And the other thing to remember is we have not awarded Western Recreation the contract either. So we would still go to tender on a design-build
Right.
contract. They were getting us some budgetary. And the other thing, actually, why that may be, is we have paid them some money to date to help do preliminary design. So they are probably discounting what we paid them to date and what would be remaining if we awarded them the full contract.
The numbers that are in there, clause 2.4, total 1,245 $1,245,000, but the first one does not calculate
Okay.
out.
Okay.
If I could, Jeff, would you please pass along to Parks and Rec, and maybe Councillor Court will be the one to do it. While I think we support the intent of their concern that the features, the beach entry, the spray feature, a little bit of a water slide, et cetera, fountains, notwithstanding their concerns, we're not flush with money. And we still have to borrow $300,000, which I like better than the initial $500,000 borrowing ceiling that we put on. But that $500,000 ceiling that we put on anticipated some of that would go into the building. So I think it's important that our dedicated servants on that Parks and Recreation Board understand, we just aren't flush with money. At this point in time, we do not intend to sacrifice any of those features that we have just mentioned and are here that we showed the public over the open houses that we had. What could suffer if we can't find the money is our building. That's what'll suffer if we can't find the money. And we haven't had an overly aggressive swimming community
To address that.
all that concerned about the issue of fundraising. And the issue of fundraising shouldn't be the sole responsibility of town council or administration. We'll try all of our best to get that ball rolling, but key people in the community outside of administration and council need to grab that bull by the horns and do some work on it, in my mind.
Mayor Schow, I would absolutely approve what you just said. I believe that we need to have a group of citizens that are passionate about this project and start to fundraise to show their passion.
Thank you, Councillor. That means a lot, I think. Having said that, I know one particular business that I'm reasonably well acquainted with that will try to be a little bit active, or proactive, or generous, whatever, in the process down the road. But it's going to take a lot of people to get the extra $200,000 or $300,000 or whatever it's going to take for that pool renovation, building renovation, Marian.
I just might suggest that we maybe have Jeff go to the Parks and Recreation Committee and show them the design and just kind of explain what council's intent is. My concern is that they may be having this conversation exterior now, and there may be some dissent within the community, so perhaps we want to go through that process just to make sure
Be
that
proactive.
everybody's on the same page.
Yeah,
Now, and by the way, I might take some of the blame because I was at the Parks and Rec meeting in Councillor Court's absence. To put a brand-new basin in the existing hole in the ground is our intent, and yet that does constitute a renovation, is that correct?
That's right.
And that part I did not understand. But to move the basin, to do a new basin in another hole in the ground,
That's
didn't
new
qualify for the grant and did not qualify as a renovation, where to put a new basin in the
same
current hole in the
spot.
ground qualifies as a renovation.
Right.
Okay.
It's unfortunate semantics, but it is what it is.
And I'm probably the guilty party that did the inadequate explanation regarding the basin staying where it is and not really being totally up to speed, that none of the proposed features and amenities would be sacrificed. But the building possibly might, we don't find some money. Councillor Edmonds.
So does when you put in the new basin, does that allow you to put all the external
Right.
in as well?
Machine.
Yeah, not to get into the whole technicality because we haven't awarded a contract to any contractor. There's two ways we've been talking with two different companies. One actually would dig a 4-foot, go out 4 feet from the entire perimeter of the pool, put in steel walls, have a 4-foot cavity where all your mechanicals run for the new pool. The other company would put in stainless steel panels around the pool basin, and then they would simply just excavate where required for new plumbing, is what happened. They would jackhammer and excavate where required. So there's a couple ways about it, and nobody's been awarded that contract, but Yeah, essentially, that's what happens.
Okay. Any further cuts?
Yeah, we only meet about every quarter with the rec board. So if you could put a map of this bill in my mail slot, I'll see these people over the next few weeks, and
Well,
I'll just discuss it with them.
And if you would, I could prepare correspondence and email it out to them,
Okay.
right away. And obviously, having you involved with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have their emails of the whole
Okay.
committee, we could send something out right away.
All right.
I have a tentative scheduled Parks and Rec meeting, May 27th.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
all right.
Oh, well, so, well,
Any further discussion on the pool? Thank you, Jeff. You've done a ton of work over the past
Thank you.
4 years on this project. Okay, so now, we're back on track here.
I'm always in what we're able to afford.
Financial report, none this meeting. We need a motion on 9A, the market surveillance report. That requires a motion. If I can have that motion, Councillor Kronen so moves. Any discussion on the market surveillance report? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carries. Market surveillance report is approved. You have there for your scrutiny, bylaw animal control report 2013, January. Any questions on that? Okay. Councillor Kronen, thank you for your report on the RETA conference that was held in Cochrane. Any further comments that need to be made?
Well, we met today as a board meeting informally to try to discuss the future of readers, and we will have more information in the next month to offer to this council.
Okay. Town council motion list, it is there. Any questions or concerns on
I
the
have
town
one
council
concern.
motion list? Councillor,
Can you put it a little bit larger?
Getting smaller and smaller.
We've given us so many assignments, I mean, fit what's on page. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I can do that for you, Council.
now, if I can say this right, and Marian will correct me, I'm sure. On March the 5th, the town is holding emergency management training. Now, that happens to be the date of committee of the whole, but council is invited to drop in and then finish where I'm going with this, Marian, so we know what we're...
Sure. We will be hosting a disaster social services training, and it'll be specifically related to the operation of the reception center. So we're inviting all of the volunteers that would be participating within the center to come take some formal training. And then on May 6th, which is the week of Alberta Emergency Management Week, and we intend to do a bit of a mock disaster and actually set up our reception center here. The reception center is used for the purpose of evacuation. So either our community or a portion of our community is evacuated, we need to be able to provide services to them and registration and make sure that that's all handled appropriately. But also there's instances where other municipalities may be evacuated and we would have to open our reception center. We've also agreed to be the reception center for the hospital in the case of an emergency at the hospital, that we would be able to provide information to concerned residents if they have people that were affected at the hospital. So we've invited the two villages, the county, McGrath, Raymond, Sterling, to come and observe, to see how that training takes place. I'm inviting council to attend. Again, you won't be particularly actively involved in the day, but I think it gives you an idea of what services would be available in a reception center and how it should be managed. So you're welcome to attend that day. I do need some RSVPs prior to, because obviously we would be providing lunch. We would also like to invite the media to attend, to observe if they would like to. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Kronen.
It's not so much a question as I participated in something of that sort when I was in BC, and I think it's a very interesting exercise to go through. I'll be there to support that.
Oh, that's a very important learning exercise for sure.
Yeah, what we try to do
Was trained. for that.
Sorry, what we try to do with that is take components of our emergency management response and do an annual training session. So, this year we're focusing on reception center. Next year it could be,
Feeding.
yeah, it could be a number of things, right? The county and the town have an informal agreement that we host semi-annual, or biannually, I guess. So I host, the town hosts this year, and then the county will host next year.
In this building?
It will be in this building for our training, yes. So.
And this is actually the reception center in the event of an emergency.
At what time do you start, Maggie?
8:30 to 3:30 is the planned time.
Councillor Creed?
Yeah, you mentioned that, we could drop in on for parts of it. I mean, you may not be able to be there the whole time. I'm wondering, are there going to be segments? Is there a opportune time that might be come, or could you give us a kind of a schedule of the day so that we could, kind of choose maybe an area? I'm just trying to figure out if there's a good time to come in and see part of it, if we can't see all of it.
I'll talk with Mark Murphy, who's the regional coordinator, and see if they can provide us some type of an outline of the days. So I'm not sure that this training is going to be beneficial for you to stop in, because you're going to just get one small segment of. The reception center there's a number of functions within the reception center, so like we may be looking at personal services, or we may be looking at lodging or food, or there's a number of those that, so I'm not sure how that'll work, but I'll talk to Mark and see if I can.
In as much as Raymond just went through this with the fire, and they hosted 60 people from Milk River, would they have expertise that we could draw on, or is this kind of?
Alberta Emergency Management is bringing in facilitators.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to the experts to do the training.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marian, you're on a roll. Would you please talk to us about 9F?
Okay. Up on the east end of town, we've had a bit of a concern there. We don't have a storm sewer system in place there. We don't have the infrastructure in place. And there's been some drainage issues between adjacent property owners and some things like that. Numerous property owners have come to me over time and we've been trying to find a solution there. One of the solutions we looked at was the potential of putting in a storm sewer main. It would have to go along the east side of the properties, which would be in the rear. The person that owns that property has agreed to give us an easement if we determine to proceed with that. Based on council's policy of developers paying for their own infrastructure, one of the options to do this would be through a local improvement tax, which means that each of the property owners are assessed a portion of the cost. Total cost of that project would be about $87,000. There's a couple of things there, I guess. There's some homes that are affected and some that are currently draining their storm to the street. So there's a bit of a mix there. But we felt that if we were going to go through the process of exploring putting the infrastructure in place, that we needed to do it appropriately and not just piecemeal it. So that's why it kind of extends around the corner on the 5th Avenue there. The letter was designed to try and set up a meeting with the property owners in the area and put this out as an option, but perhaps they have alternative options. In looking back at the letter, we should have maybe drafted it a little bit different, or perhaps made personal contact with those individuals. So I apologize to council for all of you that have been getting a number of phone calls, and especially Councillor Kronen, because it happens to be in her neighborhood. So what I have done since then is I've personally talked to a couple of the property owners, and Nolan has contacted all of the property owners, the balance of them. that he's able to get a hold of. I believe he's pretty close to 100% at this point. Just to explain that this is just simply an option. So we will meet with the property owners on February 28th, and we'll explore options there. But by no means is this something that we have to proceed with. If 2/3 of the property owners are not in favor, then we don't move forward with the local improvement. Council does have the option of still putting the infrastructure in place, but we can't charge it back to the property owners. So I would suggest that if that's one of the options council wants to explore in the future, we would have to have some fairly sound justification for that, because it has potential to impact other development in the community. So I just wanted council to be aware that we're exploring this, and we will report back to council after our meeting on the 28th as to what the citizens' wishes are from that meeting. Okay?
Thank you.
I've received a personal and confidential letter from one of the landowners impacted there, and there are several conclusions that individual has drawn, which I believe are inaccurate. The clear inference in the letter is to assert that this is the town's responsibility to do this. But let's be careful of a couple of things. Number one, we don't want to set a precedent that then we would have to go and fix everything up on 11th Street, for example. Second thing is, the town didn't develop those lots. So I'm hard pressed to feel like we have a significant burden there. So those are just a couple of my thoughts. And so I'm sure that we will hear more about this on the 28th when that meeting is held. So, Councillor Kronen?
I feel a little bit awkward talking about this because I'm part of that letter. But I just would like to know if it would be possible for administration to bring back a little bit of the history of the development of that area when we have that meeting on the 28th, to try to understand why there never was a plan in place with a sewer drainage
That was
at the time. I think it would be good if the history and the data were presented. Maybe it will shed a little bit more light.
Yeah, and that was the intent of the meeting, Councillor, is that we could have, rather than contacting individuals and meeting with them individually, so what we found historically is that when we do it that way, they hear things differently.
Correct.
And so we felt that it was important to get as many as we could in the room and give the same message to all. So that was our intent, was to give a little bit of historic background, why we're faced with the issue today, and what are some of the options moving forward.
Thank you.
So.
Okay, Councillor Creed?
I just have a question on the storm sewer, the 3 meters deep. I guess the question is this, has an engineer kind of planned this out, and where would it drain, where would it empty?
At this point in time, we've looked at having, there's a bit of a weeping tile structure in the middle of the field that's to the east, and we've looked at tying that into that. Now, we have not had an engineer design this at this point. We've had our engineering technologist review it, and he's looked at it with engineering advice. But no, we have not engineered it at this point because it's just preliminary. We needed to determine some costs and whether it was even feasible at this point in time. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Marian. Now, this is probably something where, unless administration feels otherwise, that maybe council should probably attend, but maybe not.
I will be there by the
Yeah,
sheer fact.
I don't know
That
that
makes
council
me-
needs to be present. This
Okay.
is an administrative issue that we deal with the citizens, and we'll report back to council on what the outcome of that meeting was.
Okay, so, correspondence, I'll just go through them. Stop me if anyone has any questions or concerns. Old Man Watershed Council, they're thanking us for a little bit of a donation we gave. Government of Alberta is there with some comments. ATCO Gas, they're going to change the meters to the remote meters. Community Futures Alberta Southwest, they're going to do some business visitations, right?
Mayor Schow, we missed the Government of Alberta and the water conservation sessions in Lethbridge.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Water conservation sessions in Lethbridge. And I think we've all got those. They are Thursday the 28th in Lethbridge, and or there's Milk River, or there's Pincher Creek. Lethbridge is, well, I mean, it's up to us. So, Marian, do we need, I'm just having a look here. I guess it's just a drop-in situation, information.
Yeah, that's what it appears to me. There's no requirement for RSVPs.
Okay. There's an online workbook that's available beginning the 11th of February. And it's going to stay there until March the 29th. Feedback can be given through email. They're open to the public, doors open at 5. Facilitated conversations from 5:30 to 8 o'clock. Community Futures Alberta Southwest is there, anybody that's interested. Alberta Sport and Recreation Parks and Wildlife Foundation. And they are asking us if we are interested in submitting, I guess, a letter of interest in hosting the Winter Games at some point. But it's the opinion at this time that we do not have the accommodations to make something like
If
that.
you're dealing with towns less than 10,000, you need to combine with other towns, and that's just not
Can't do it,
feasible.
no.
So the chair will entertain a motion to go into camera.
Actually, can I just ask a question about the community future thing there?
Yep.
Is the town,
Still with Pincher Creek.
in the letter here, it says the town pays the interest on those loans there? Is
Yeah.
that, do we have something on that then? or
Yeah, it's
something?
in our budget.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
We
Is
have,
there a certain limit that,
yeah, we
We
approved
budgeted
it.
for,
Approved interest for up
For
to
5
50
business.
Yeah, up to 5 loans at 10,000, so up to $50,000.
$50,000.
okay, okay,
That's how much.
yeah, okay.
Interest on
not
50,000.
not 50,000.
Interest
on for
50,000.
Okay.
It's $2,200 and something dollars, I think. if I'm not
Is that,
mistaken.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right, good.
The chair will entertain a motion to go in camera. Moved by Councillor Edmonds. All in favor to go in camera. And for the folks that are in the media, well, thank you for coming, and probably a good time for us to have a little bit of a tea break.